Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much to the organizers for extending the kind invitation for me to speak to you today. The topic that I'm going to address today is really about facing reality. So I'm just going to. So the image that you see on the screen is what we call the blue marble. In fact, it's one of the very first few images that was actually taken by NASA of our beautiful planet Earth. And it's amazing, isn't it? The view that you observe from here. But when you actually start zooming in or taking a microscopic view of what's really happening around our world today, you will realize that there are actually a lot of problems that we face. You know, from pollution to, climate change, to gender inequality, children not being able to go to schools. And these are basically responsibilities that, we have to face, right, as mankind. And specifically on climate action, I genuinely believe that a lot of the issues that we face currently in climate change are related to mankind in one way or another. If we look at our industrial practices, where we emit large amounts of carbon, to industrialization, agriculture, coal plants, like a lot of the big and largest businesses that we see around the world are still involved in coal mining, whether we like it or not. And then there's also deforestation and forest fires that are happening. All of this are contributing to the impacts of climate change. Data doesn't lie. And if we look at the data, over the past 50 years or so, we can see that temperatures have shifted quite drastically. The image that you see on the screen was also a study that was conducted by NASA, right? Measuring mean temperatures. And you can see it's quite evenly distributed between 1951 to 1980s. But just over the years, mean temperatures have been shifting drastically towards the higher end. So it is skewed. And extreme weather patterns are increasing more than ever. In the past, they used to cover only about 0.1% of our Earth's surface. Believe it or not, that number has increased by 14 times, 14 folds. So we are seeing higher events of floods, droughts, forest fires happening at an unprecedented rate. And what does that mean, to mankind? In Hatay in Turkey in 2017, temperatures were so hot that roads started melting. When roads melt, what do you think happens to accessibility? It gets affected. Cars cannot even travel. You cannot commute. In such hot temperatures of climate. In Ahmedabad in India, it's been recorded that at least more than 2,000 people have died in 2015 as a result of the Indian heat wave. And guess what were the warmest temperatures that we have ever recorded? In Basra, in Iraq, in 2016, temperatures soared to 129 degrees Fahrenheit. That's almost 53.9 degrees Celsius if you do the conversion. And on July 21st, in 2016, in Kuwait, temperatures soared to 54 degrees. Can you imagine in Malaysia, the moment temperatures reach about 35 degrees, most Malaysians, as I would know it, would start complaining. You notice how we have, one of the most shopping malls, I think, in our cities, and they're all air-conditioned, because we simply cannot tolerate. Can you imagine 54 degrees Celsius? I don't know about you, but I think for me personally, I think that's simply unbearable. It's almost insane. And of course, needless to say, that a lot of our global systems are very vulnerable to climate change. And I'm talking about how it affects our food supply. Some of our food supplies are very sensitive to changes in temperature. And I'll explain a little bit more in the following slide. Our water systems are also affected. In fact, in Malaysia, we tend to get 2 seasons in a year, rain and sunshine. But never would anyone have ever imagined that the day would come where we have actually experienced water security issues in parts of Selangor. In fact, the water crisis that we faced were so bad that, can you imagine, in the 21st century, you turn on your taps and there's literally no water. There's no water for drinking, or showering, or even for irrigation in agriculture. And this is Malaysia that we're talking about. I'm not too sure about you guys, but I don't know if you've heard that in Cape Town, day 0 is fast approaching. So they are running out of water very quickly. And what do you think is going to happen when you run out of water? Yeah, death. There's going to be global wars. In fact, there's a quote that says that the war of the future will be because of water. And this has already happened in certain parts of India, where people are actually literally fighting over certain territorial areas just to ensure that there's water security for their citizens. And of course, it goes without saying that climate change is also one of the largest health threats. And this has been declared by more than 150 World Health Organizations. The projected U declines, for each 1 degree Celsius of increase in temperature is quite extreme. In fact, if you look at 4 main crops, which make up about 2/3 of human caloric intake, corn, for example, would drop by about 7.4%, wheat by 6%, rice by 3.2%, and last but not least, soy by approximately 3%. I know these percentages look really small by comparison, but they affect billions of people out there. I've mentioned earlier that there are a lot of health organizations that have acknowledged and declared that health impacts of climate action demand immediate attention from everyone. And they came out with a declaration on climate change and health 2 years ago in 2017, saying that climate change is one of the biggest health threats ever. And of course, this isn't too hard to comprehend. With droughts, you will get waterborne diseases such as cholera and dysentery. But there's also a very interesting case study that was actually conducted by Harvard University with regards to the Aedes mosquito. So, the Aedes mosquito basically goes through what we call a metamorphosis, where it goes from an egg to a larvae to a full-blown mosquito. And what happens with this Aedes breed is that it typically ingests the Zika virus as part of its food. But it would have died out before the virus had time to incubate in the mosquito. So it doesn't actually become a vector. However, under warmer temperatures, the situation is reversed completely. What we are observing now is that this breed of mosquitoes are actually living much longer, and the virus, like Zika, actually has time to incubate fully. So the mosquito, which was not that dangerous, has now become a vector. So when it bites, that virus actually stays in your human body. In fact, in Puerto Rico, 1 out of 5 women, which makes up about 20% of the women population, are infected by the Zika virus already. And you can see birth deformities, right, in some of these children. So, I think it goes without saying that, change is inevitable. So, I'm sure every one of you here would agree that we must change, right? Yeah, so the answer is a resounding yes. So, 193 member countries worldwide gathered in September 2015 to look at all of the issues that we were facing worldwide. It's called the Sustainable Development Goals, or the Global Goals in short. It encapsulates perhaps 17 of the most pertinent issues that we're facing. From the need to end hunger, the need to end poverty, the need to provide universal access to education, and as I've mentioned earlier, like Goal 13 on climate change, which I genuinely believe is the defining issue of our generation. Just because there are so many issues that are tied in to Goal 13 on climate change. And if we don't act fast, there wouldn't really be a planet for us to live in anymore that's sustainable. And it's important to bear in mind as well that when you're looking at these goals are universal goals. And what does that mean? It means that they are not only applicable to developing countries, but also developed countries. And both parties have to work hand in hand, regardless of whether you're from the private sector, the public sector, or even civil society organizations or CSO. Each and every single entity has an important and significant role to play in addressing these 17 goals. And if you were to zoom in as well, there are about 169 targets with very, very high levels of aspirations. The second question that I want to pose is, can we change? Can we? I want to put forth an argument that we do have the solutions at hand. If you look at green energy progress, like in year 2000, the worldwide wind capacity that was projected would reach about approximately 30 gigawatts by the year 2010. But if you look at reality, in 2016 itself, we have actually exceeded that goal by 16 times. What about solar energy? The projection in 2002 says that we will grow 1 gigawatt per year by 2010. And the reality, we have exceeded that number by 17 times. In fact, in 2016, that number was exceeded by 75 times, which means that we are making significant progress. Look at all the countries that are planning to phase out fossil fuel vehicles. You've got Norway, Netherlands, even India and China are taking part in this movement of wanting to phase out fossil fuels and reduce carbon emissions. So the commitments that you see is strong. If you look at the private sector and corporations, more than 100 global companies have already made a commitment to go 100% renewable. And these solutions are not just large scale, so to speak. I mean, if you look at certain parts of, if you look at some of the solutions that have been proposed in developing countries, entrepreneurs are making a huge statements. They're introducing innovative solutions, such as the pay-as-you-go solar power. So even though if you're not living in big cities, you're living in small rural areas, you can still go green. The options are there. Solutions are there. It's just a matter of, can you be innovative? And I think digitalization has a lot to do with this. Digitalization drives a lot of the innovation that we're seeing in the green renewable space. The third question is, will we change? As I was reflecting on this question, I reflected on this question when I was actually about 12 or 14 years old. You see, I grew up in a very small town in Kuantan along the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia. And as a kid, I've gone through and have experienced some of the worst floods that you could ever imagine. My family, we have lost a lot of assets. During such floods, we had to move to, schools that were in a higher terrain. And it was a very difficult time. And I remembered asking a lot of the adults around me as a kid, right? Why is this happening so frequently? And is there anything that we can do about it? And most of the adults would just answer and say that, oh, you know what? It's just an act of God. You have to face it and accept that as fate. And of course, being the rebel that I was, I refused to accept that. I said, when I grow up one of these days, I am going to move into the climate activism space. I am going to speak up. I am going to make sure that my voice is represented, not just in my local communities, but also, at an international level. Visibility is very important, because if you don't tell your story, no one would ever know what you have actually gone through. And there are 3 lessons that I guess I'd like to share, right, throughout the journey that I've taken. The first lesson is, it's very important to know your why. What is it that you're passionate about? You saw the 17 goals that I've shared a while ago, right? What is it that makes you think? What is that all-consuming passion that that ignites that fire in your belly? That makes you wake up every day thinking that, I'm excited to get to work because I know that what I do has an impact on the future generations. So it's very important to find out what your why is and the purpose of your existence. Don't just exist, but live life meaningfully every single day. Life, after all, is short if you think about it. The second lesson is find your tribe. It's very important to find a group of people that you can resonate and connect with. They are basically your source of motivation. They keep you accountable. And they're also partners. If you look at Goal 17 of the SDGs, what does it say? Exactly. It focuses on partnerships. And why do you think partnerships is important? Yeah, that's one of the reasons. Apart from just being social, I'm sure you have heard of this phrase that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's very important and it's amazing to see all of you here today, because I sincerely hope that you will find your tribe here. You just never know. So networking is important. And of course, the third lesson is to sit at the table. I've mentioned earlier on, each and every one of you, believe it or not, you have a voice, right? Sometimes it's not really about finding your voice, but projecting it. When you're given an opportunity to sit on tables with decision makers, sit at that table. Make sure that the communities that you represent is visible. Because you have a powerful, story. And youths are no longer the leaders of tomorrow. They are the leaders of today. Each and every one of you, have an influence. You just got to believe and dig deep, and continue to represent the communities that you come from. Sit at the table. I guess I just wanted to end by showing you that, while the US administration has not been very receptive of climate action, but believe it or not, the youths are the ones who are stepping up to the plate. They are the ones who are organizing climate marches. The governments may try to bury them, but you know what? They are sunflowers, they will bloom. If they're a diamond, they will shine no matter what. Do not be silent, by people who are trying to bury you. In fact, you got to shine brighter than ever before, in a world that has got so many injustices. You've got to stand up for those who are being bullied. Lend a voice to those who are voiceless. There are so many things that, I can share with you, and I feel time's running out. But I guess I just wanted to end by saying that, as youths, we have the power in our hands. We just got to believe and start to take action. Do you believe in yourself? And it's time for us to rise and make a difference in the world that we live in today. With that, thank you.